It's wellness because it's the most essential thing to every human being. To think that there's any part of you that can be compartmentalized, separating your mental from your physical, from your relationships, from your financial, I think is impossible. I am Briana Thompson. I'm originally from Queens, New York, but I grew up in Gwinnett County. Have to shout out Gwinnett. And I am the founder and CEO of Spiked Spin and Wellness Company. Spiked Spin is a lifestyle and wellness brand. We launched the company with indoor cycling classes, hip hop cycling classes that really get people energized. And we want them to forget about the movement that they're doing sometimes. But overall, we just want to be a wellness resource for people in underrepresented and underserved communities. And the biggest goal is to really make an impact on as many lives as possible in as many communities as possible across the US. We are so excited for the contribution and partnership from Jimmy Jazz, which is helping us to improve our experience here in the Bed-Stuy studio, while also allowing us to expand to a new market this year in 2022.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that little clip, just a preview of what's in store for this afternoon. My name is Alicia Suggs, and I'm the Vice President of Administration, part of the Metro New York chapter of the National Black MBA Association. And welcome to the Business of Wellness series featuring Briana Thompson. Before I get into my discussion, my little great discussion that I'm super excited about, I want to give you additional information on this powerhouse of a woman. So Briana Thompson is a multifaceted entrepreneur, wellness advocate, and content creator. She is the founder of Spiked Spin and Wellness Company, a first of its kind, intuitive wellness company disrupting traditional wellness experiences for Black women and allies. Briana has partnered with premier brands such as Nike, Beats by Dre, and Champ Sports, among others, to elevate her mission of seeing more Black women and allies engage in healthy living practices. Briana graduated from Hampton University with a degree in English in 2012. Now, without further ado, welcome Briana Thompson.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited for the conversation.
Yes, I'm very excited that you're here. So let's jump into it. So as of late, we've been hearing self-care, soft life, really trying to change the narrative for Black women and just Black community overall. And when we think of wellness, you are the premier wellness advocate. So what does that term mean for you? And have you always been passionate about living a healthy lifestyle?
I think wellness is such a heavy term because it's been taken on by so many different industries. And so there are people who obviously, like myself, are referring to mental and physical and financial wellness and things that are associated with the well-being and betterment of the person. But when you say things like well-being and betterment of the person, because of soft life and because people are wanting to take hold of their experience, I think the term has become, I hate to say watered down, but in some ways watered down. And so getting back to the root of like what wellness means to me, it is always going to be very closely related to some of those internal things that actually impact the external. So like I saw a purse company, calling themselves like a wellness brand, and I was immediately triggered, and I had to remove my own, like issues. I'm like, okay, Briana, this is a word, it's fine. But I do think the term should be reserved for the betterment of the actual individual, less associated with some of these external factors that don't really improve our overall life and well-being. And I know I said a lot, but again, the word is so layered at this point because it's being so overly used.
Yeah.
And when I think about wellness and have I always been passionate about it? Actually, yes. I was a dancer. I was an athlete basically my entire life. And I didn't realize that I was always an advocate. Is that okay? I didn't realize that I was always an advocate for wellness, but in retrospect, other people have kind of pointed me to moments in their life where they're like, Briana, do you remember at Hampton when you would be the girl like trying to get everyone to meet in the student center at the gym? or you would be the one, you know, even in high school after practice trying to get us to do this thing. So I think there's always been unintentionally very much me just expressing myself through the lens of wellness. Obviously not as intentionally as I am today, but it's definitely been something present throughout my life.
So like for me, my parents always went to the gym. So that's like something that's been normalized. Can you say the same for yourself? Like, do you have, you know, parents that did the same thing, which is where it became so natural for you?
Yeah, I would say that my parents are the anomaly of our families, and they are who have kind of created the change in our family lineage. So like I'd love to take responsibility, and people always point to like me being the one, but if I'm honest, it was actually my mom and her family line and my dad and his family line. My mom was a dancer her entire life, and then she got pregnant with me, but she's always been very health conscious. I remember growing up, her telling me things like eating too much sugar literally at 7 when I went to eat Skittles, like this will cause diabetes very early. So I was very conscious of these kinds of things, even young. Even to the fact that my dad would water down my juice. All my cousins would be drinking like regular juice, and I was 10 years old getting water and juice. Like, this is weird. But that is real. And my dad, I will say, he's not traditional in his working out. Like, he's not the guy that's going to the gym. But we're New Yorkers, and he will walk from Harlem to the financial district. If that means nothing to you, it's a good like 3 to 4 miles. And he just like does that on the regular.
Yeah.
And that's how he always says, you know, like, I want to maintain my youth. I gotta stay as fine as y'all. I gotta stay hip. Like, he's very obsessed with being young and hip. So I think it's been present very much so in my life. But I have seen both sides because, again, my parents are the anomalies, you know, in their respective family, like amongst their siblings and my grandparents, etc.
Right. That's great. So tell me about the motivation behind developing the initial brand and spin class Spike Spin.
Originally, it started just because I was working in advertising. I had the opportunity to go to so many fun experiences, and a lot of times expensive experiences. And they didn't pay us enough, but they paid us in cool. So we would get to go to like the best restaurants and these boutique wellness experiences, and like smoozing us with things, because we weren't making the salary when we initially started. And as I was doing that, I was exposed to boutique fitness. And as I was going to these different classes, many of which you're all familiar with, Barry's Bootcamp, Soul Cycle, back then there were a few others that were in the mix. And I tended to be the only woman of color, or I was the only person from Queens. You know, like I started to feel like an outsider. And I realized that there was something very beautiful that was happening, that myself and many people who look like me or are from where I am from are not being exposed to these types of experiences. And so when I thought about the disconnect, there were so many. I'm like, there's no authenticity here for us. There's no culture here for us. There's no one that looks like us. And I was very unapologetic about saying that in 2016. So before all of the racial unrest of 2020, before many of the murders that have been happening, I was unapologetically saying, like, Black people specifically deserve a space created for their wellness, because our lived experience is so intense that to not provide us something specific is a disservice. And we all know the many disservices that we experience, but that was my solution, or to be a part of a solution to a much larger issue. And so that's how it began. And then I was still doing my full-time job, and I kept getting opportunity after opportunity. And I just had a very strong yearning of like, this is what you're meant to do, not cycling, but the betterment of this group of people is what you're here to do through the lens of wellness. And it's expanded, and I've trusted myself, and I've doubted myself, and I've gone through all of the things, but it's brought me to this moment today.
So you mentioned that, you still had your full-time job, and I loved your classes. So for everyone on the line, I attended several classes. My best friend got me onto these classes in the financial district. That's where it started. I remember like times where, class would start at 6 and you're rushing in and you're like, I'm so sorry, I have to change. I just can't work, right? But your class was my form of self-care. But this was your side hustle while you had your regular 9 to 5. So what did you do for self-care during that time? Because that's 2 jobs, right? So how did you take care of yourself? Did you have support?
First, I have to say, like, shout out to you for being an OG. Like, if you were with me in the financial district, you understand what it means to be here today, because you really saw, and I try to express it, and a lot of people just don't understand that we were in a room of Black women, all Black women, sweating it out, caring for ourselves, loving on each other. It was such a special time that I sometimes like wish I could re-immerse myself in it. So I'm sorry, but you experienced something that was so special in my life that I've never been able to recreate. And it was just such a beautiful time. But self-care for me, if I'm honest, was not a priority then, because I just loved what I was doing. I didn't feel like I was missing anything, because showing up and doing it was like, it was, even though I was pouring out, it was as much the women pouring back into me, which was what I was just kind of alluding to. It's like there were very few instances in my day-to-day world where I just got to be around Black women who just wanted to like love on each other. We were not hating on each other. We were not competing. We were not, even if you didn't know each other, the room just felt good. And I think for me, that was like what I needed at that time of my life. I just needed that energy. I needed to be reminded that these kinds of spaces can exist, that regardless of what these narratives say about Black women and how we are or how we may treat each other, I'm like, no, I've seen in real time how we love, cater, and care for one another. And I think that was my approach to self-care. Now I'm so much more intentional, because I am pouring out of what I feel like sometimes is an empty cup, and I'm trying my best. I call it live my raps, and I'm trying to honor, the same things that I'm encouraging my community to do, myself. Mm-hmm. But I will admit, it is very difficult when you have such a big passion, a really strong mission and desire to achieve this thing that is very difficult to reach. So I think, yes, I have support. I have an amazing husband. I have the best friend group. I have the best family. My son is like my life's joy. So all of those things fill me up, but I would be lying if I said that like I prioritize my own self-care. I don't. I prioritize your self-care. And I care about you having the best time. It's a phase of my life that I'm in for the past 6 years, and hopefully I will get to a part where like I feel more comfortable prioritizing me, but I'm just not there yet.
Got it. So like I said, I've followed you on social media for several years, and I know you have your 9 to 5. And I remember when you posted, I think it was like empty boxes, and you were like, I'm moving on. And I was like, oh my God, she's doing it. And I remember the newsletters coming out, and you were like, are you going to support me if I, I remember all of this, right? And so when you made that transition from a full-time corporate job to a full-time wellness entrepreneur, I know our members that are entrepreneurs are super nervous. That's a very scary time. What was going through your mind at the time, and how did you prepare for that jump?
What was going through my mind was definitely fear. I have never viewed myself as an entrepreneur. I always viewed myself as, I knew I wanted to be like a C-suite executive, but I didn't see myself as like a CEO. I saw myself as maybe like a CMO, working my way up in advertising, maybe going brand side. So I had a trajectory in my mind that was very clear, and I was well on the path to do so. Like, I have to always be clear with people that I didn't leave advertising because I hated it. I actually loved my job. I loved my career. I was on a very, I loved what I was doing.
Yeah.
I left because there was this pull that kept pointing me to one direction, which was like Spiked and wellness. I kept getting opportunities where I was like, am I going to turn away this thing that's actually like my salary?
Yeah.
You know, like it started to get to those kinds of spaces where I realized I can replace my salary. One, which financial literacy and like being prepared financially is very important to me. I was not the girl who needs to hustle out of desperation. I actually do not like that feeling.
Yeah.
I prefer to make decisions out of abundance because I know I'm making a good decision versus a desperate decision.
Right.
So I think the first thing was like making sure that I was financially prepared, which I was because I was working my career, and the money that came from Spiked, I only reinvested it into the business. So I wasn't living off of the money that we made from, you know, those classes. I was putting it to the side so that we could open the doors to Brooklyn with no investors, which we were able to do.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that was great. I mean, now we need to talk to investors. We need to scale quickly and make this money. But then I had a different POV. I think secondarily, I had to prepare my partner, right? Like this is not going to look the same because entrepreneurial money does not look quite the same as that 2-week direct deposit on the dot for sure. There are ebbs and flows to entrepreneurship and to revenue and to profit and to paying a team, which I do now. Like I have an entire staff that I need to make sure they get their money. I get paid last, which is something that I don't think enough entrepreneurs are saying out loud. If I know there are some that say like pay yourself first, but I feel about my internal community the way I do about my external community. I know what I can stand for. I don't know what other people can do in their homes. You know, like I know that I have a partner who can help me if they needed to, if he needed to, whereas I don't know that I can say the same for all of my staff. And so I make sure they can eat, they can feed their families, and I pay myself last. And I think it was just preparing mentally to know that I'm capable, but also you have to be very disciplined, right? Like that first day of not going into the office, it's like, I'm like, am I going to Pilates? Am I like, what?
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to put yourself, I think, almost on a more regimented schedule, because when I had the 9 to 5, I knew everything that had to get done. When I had my entire day, it was like, oh, I guess I could, you know, I had to really be thoughtful and intentional. And that was a learning curve, if I'm honest.
And so you mentioned that you didn't need investors to back the standalone facility now based in Brooklyn. So what else did it take to develop this space? Because, you know, from what I've seen, it's gorgeous.
It is beautiful. I cannot lie. It's been a journey because, you know, we closed for 20 months during the pandemic. So we were open November 2019, March 2020, completely shut down, which was like a dagger in the heart. We opened the studio November 2019. I leave corporate February 2020. March 2020, we get notification that the business has to close mandatory for 20 months. So that timeline, and I had a child in October 2020. So that timeline for me was very intense. But I say all of that to say what it took was a lot of intentionality and thoughtfulness and grit, right? Like I would be lying if I say like, oh, you just need a really strong marketing strategy. You do. You need a very strong marketing strategy. You need a very strong understanding of your consumer, what they want. Is it worth staying open? Is it worth closing? You need a really strong financial analysis that can tell you like, can you keep the doors open? Is it worth it to keep the doors open? And then when you have all of the like hard things in place, you need the soft skills, which is like, I need a lot of grit. And I need a lot of focus to make it through this difficult time, because every day is another opportunity for me to say, I give up.
Right.
And that's the reality of what it was like opening the space. And now it's beautiful to see what it looks like on the other side of staying true, seeing it through, and making sure that you have a team, which I think is another very important part of entrepreneurship. I don't live in New York anymore. And to see the studio function in the way that it does, I obviously can point 300,000 holes and all of the things that I think need to be improved and all of the things that we need to do more of. but to see us functioning and serving the community in the way that we are with the lean team, it's incredible.
That's truly amazing. And like I was going to ask you about how did you pivot? Was there anything else that you did during that time when the shop was closed to make sure that things just kept afloat?
I was looking obviously into like grants and any of the like public funding that was available to our industry and to Black women and to Black founders and like those kinds of things. They did help somewhat, but that time personally was not focused on business because like I said, I got pregnant in March.
Right.
So my focus had to shift to my new reality, which was becoming a mother. And what does this look like with a child? So I was thinking about things like, do I need to go back to a corporate career? Do I need to have things in place to prepare for this new life? How am I showing up when I'm literally sick? Like these are the things that are behind the scenes that no one gets an eye in, but like my first 1.5 trimesters were so difficult. So I spent most of my days in the dark, literally laying on the floor, asking my husband, like, stay away from me. It's a pandemic. I'm nervous about COVID. I can't see my family. My business is closed. A lot of things that once lit up my life went dark very quickly. And I think that's when I learned the entrepreneur that I am. And that's when I started to build more confidence in who I am, right? Like there are people who have better skill sets. There are people who may have more experience. There are people, but it was put in me to do this and to bring this to the world, which is why I see the success that I do and which is why I will not give up on it because I realize there's something special about all of the experiences that I've had and what they're meant to bring out on the other side. That's
amazing. And, you know, your story is truly inspiring to me. And I've said this to you before, but I really, you know, I'm sure everyone has heard of Slutty Vegan's CEO Pinky. And I feel like you are going to be the wellness version of that. And
From your lips to God's ears.
And I'm already seeing how Spike Spin is evolving and expanding. And now it's Spike Spin and Wellness Company. What does that mean? What does that mean for the brand overall?
That means no limits. I've never seen it as Spike Spin only. There was an email that I wrote when I first started and it was like nothing. It was just in my brain. And I was like, Spike Spin is the brand of, you know, this conglomerate Spike's company. Like I had already been putting it into the world. But I think we wanted to expand beyond spin because there are so many other things and resources that Black women need. And I didn't want to pigeonhole us into being only associated with spin. I am already thinking about like everything that I do is market research. When I'm on social media and I'm looking at what Black women are posting, I'm trying to get into their psyche of like, what is it that you actually need? What is it that you're saying beneath the surface? I see all of these like jump starts and resets and like day 25 for the 25th time. And like, there are just all these things that I consistently see us living in. And there are a lot of solutions that I am working through in the background in terms of our product offering. And so the first step was just like me stepping out of my own way and being like, okay, let's just get the name out there. Let's get people to start to see us through a different lens. We started offering virtual classes and wellness and yoga and Pilates. And so like there are other things unfolding that I just wanted to tear the bandage off of being pigeonholed to spin. You know, when people reach out to us, they're like, oh, can we do a spin class? And I'm like, that's not what your audience actually needs right now. So I don't really want to do a spin class. And I wanted to be able to say that with authority. And I think that's where it came from. So I'm excited for the continued evolution. This was definitely step one, but the reception has been incredible. It's reaffirmed that, you know, our target audience needs, wants, and will participate in more than spin. And so again, it goes back to just like this continued evolution of like trusting my instincts, even though I don't have it fully baked because I can't see the rest all the time.
So do you think your background in advertising helped you a lot in your current role? In what ways?
Yes. Advertising prepared me, one, to think like a consumer and to see things through the lens of a consumer, but it also allowed me to see things through the lens of a client. So when I think like a consumer, I'm like, well, what do they actually want? What do we need to do more of? What are we overcomplicating? What should we simplify? The same things, the same analysis that I would have done for any of my clients in advertising. And then when I think like a client, I'm like, well, what would, I worked in tech, so mostly with like Samsung, Apple, Canon. These were all my clients, and they were some of the most horrendous clients, but they were great clients because what they were doing was pushing us to see beyond the surface. And so when I'm thinking about my business, just like I said, I can poke 300,000 holes. It comes from that. It comes from me consistently having to find the solution in real time for some of the holes that the clients would consistently pick. And then from there, it's obviously being able to develop a strategy. It's being able to go out and negotiate and ask for more money, which was my favorite. I was a killer on that side of the business. I'm like, actually, no, there's more that you can do. And so
there. How do you get, because for me, that's hard for me as a woman to ask for money. Usually I'm like, it's very uncomfortable. Like, what type of tips would you give for someone who's looking, who's in your position or an entrepreneur? How do you ask for money, and how did you become so comfortable doing that?
I became comfortable definitely from advertising. So negotiating with different publishers was my day-to-day when I first started in the industry. I was a media planner and buyer. And so it was literally my job to get savings for our clients. And my team, I am so grateful for my team. I worked for a team of women who were like sharks. And they taught me very early, this is your responsibility and the savings are there for you to find. And I just think like that all of the time. So I think my first tip is like, remove yourself from it. It has nothing to do with you. When you're asking for savings on behalf of your client, when you're asking for money for your company, it's not a personal attack on you if they say yes or no. It's just a matter of if the money is there, if the budget is there, and if it makes sense for whatever you're prioritizing at the time. So like if I'm asking for sponsorship dollars, and they come to me with 5,000 and I say I need 10,000, the most thing they can say is no. And I think it's getting comfortable with understanding, like, take your personal self out of it. A lot of times we're going into it as like Alicia, or if I'm going into it, and I can't lie, like sometimes when I've been beaten down and told no a million times, I will be the first person to tell you, I'm like, all right, forget it. Just, I don't need, forget it. But then you get back into it and you remember, like, this is actually not about me. So removing yourself is number one. Number two, really understanding what you're selling, right? Even if you're asking for a sponsorship, if you are asking for an investor, whatever you're asking for, you're selling something. You're giving something in exchange for something. You're not just asking for money for them to get nothing. It's an even exchange on their behalf. And so when you start to value whatever it is that you're selling or that you're putting in front of them, you can get them to value it too. And it's an exchange. You're not begging. You're not going to people saying like, can I just have money and that's it? Right. You're saying, I need money and it's going to do X, Y, and Z for you. And so when you begin to recognize that, like, this is an even exchange, this is something for something, it helps you to think about, like, how do I need to best talk to this person so that they can understand the value that I'm bringing to them. And so I don't think it can be a one-to-one conversation. If I'm talking to Alicia for the MBA and I'm talking to someone else for, I don't know, pizza, I'm going to speak in two different languages because they're two different targets and they're two different things that you need to take away from me. So that's the second point. And the third point is work the muscle. Be told no and get used to it. And the more that you do it, the better you become. You get faster in your responses, you get faster in your rebuttals, you understand when they tell you no, you understand how to pivot, you understand how to ask for something different. So I think it's just a practice of like doing it as much as possible. Again, when I was in advertising, I was doing it with hundreds of publishers daily. And I didn't look at them, unfortunately, this is terrible, please don't like quote me on this, but I didn't look at it as people. I looked at it transactionally. I looked at it as like, you have something that my clients need. I have something that your business needs. How do we make it work for us? So I wasn't thinking about like, hey, this is Matt with kids and a dog. I was just like, this is Time Inc., which is $1 billion company. They need to save me $25, whatever it is. So I think that also kind of helps.
Would you say that you've always had this fierce confidence? Or do you think advertising, no, it's fierce, because it's not easy to prove your worth of your business, especially like you have Spike Spin. Nobody had heard of it, right? You have to know that your company is of worth and of value, but that takes confidence to know that. Do you think that once you graduated from school and you went into advertising, is that where you got that confidence, or has it always been prevalent within you?
I don't think I have fierce confidence. I
Really?
think I am able to, no, I think I have confidence, but it definitely did not come from graduating and working in advertising. It came from a lot of hard work. It came from a lot of the moments that I tell you that we shared in that studio, me talking to you, because it's what I needed to hear myself.
Yeah.
I think I've built the woman that I want to be, and it's a continual effort to show up as her. I think it's working the muscle, and when I've done a lot of things that when they're scary, I've done them anyway. And so I try to keep living in that, like, you can do it, you can do it. But please believe that behind the scenes, there are a lot of tears, a lot of breakdowns, a lot of insecurity, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of like, asking my mom and my husband and my friends and my therapist, am I really that girl? Can I really do this? Is this possible? And that's why I love being in the studio, because when I'm on the bike and when I'm talking to and pouring into the women, I'm receiving it. And that's why it goes back to, like, I was giving you all what I needed. And I think that's why the experience was so authentic, because when I'm saying things to other people, I'm not saying it from lip service or because it sounds nice. I am living and breathing much of the same experience as you. And I acknowledge weakness, I acknowledge sadness, I acknowledge insecurity, I acknowledge all of the things that we don't want to discuss, right? So like, fierce confidence is beautiful, and it's a wonderful way to show up, and I'm honored that that's the way that you perceive me. But I would be lying to present myself and pretend like that's all that there is to me. Like, there are so many other layers that go into make this woman that I think are just as beautiful and necessary. And so when it's time to be fiercely confident and you are asking for something or you're presenting yourself, then you better be fiercely confident. And when there are those moments where you need to cry it out or you need to just like shut it all down and go dark, that's real too. And so I never want to present one side of the narrative.
I appreciate your candidness on that. That's beautiful. As a Black woman, and especially in our organization, we kind of like to push the envelope and talk about things that we don't typically talk about in our community. We did a fertility event back in March of last year because we want to talk about, preserving your eggs. And, as a businesswoman, sometimes we're so like heads down in our business and we kind of forget that we are women, and we, some of us want to get married, some of us want to have children, and you've done it very well from what I could see. How did you manage to do all of that, balance your personal life while expanding your business to what it is today?
I think the very first thing that you need is a strong partner. I could write a book about my husband because he is literally one of the strongest people that I know, not only in terms of just what he deals with in his own goals and his own personal journey, but like, I'm a lot. And I appreciate his strength and being there to support me. And I think that is really the basis of everything, whether it's a platonic relationship or a romantic relationship. You have to have people around you who see you. Pretending that you're not who you are does not help you or serve you in any way. So when I started to step into like a more public persona and a more public image, that was a conversation. Like, every part of it has been a conversation. And so I think it's finding somebody. This is literally like the most important thing. Finding somebody who is willing to grow separately, but with you at the same time. And we could do another panel about that, but that is really the key to what keeps this engine going and what makes people feel like I'm doing it so effortlessly. It's because I do have a support system that literally is there. I can call a friend I'm like, hey, I have to be at the studio. Can Law come stay at your house for an hour? Or can you come sit with me in the studio with my husband? Like there's a lot of people who are involved in making sure that I am able to operate as optimally as I can. And when they're not there and not available, I'm very honest and transparent. Like, hey, I actually can't do this today because of my son. But I do think that, to your earlier point, my son was a gift, not a plan. And I think that's important to note too, because if he didn't come the way that he did, I too may be caught in this kind of like cycle of never being prepared, because I even feel that now, where I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much I want to do. I want to see this number in the bank. I want to see this. I want to go on this trip. There are all of these different things that can make you feel like you have to do them before. And I think what having Law has done is shown me that like, it doesn't stop. Yeah. You keep living. You still have all of the same opportunities. It does get more difficult. I'm not going to pretend like you have the same 24 hours in a day. You don't. The 24 hours looks a bit different. Right. Right. But it's possible. And I love when women, that is the ultimate compliment. Like fierce confidence, great. Telling me that I'm managing my family and my business and it's inspiring, that for me is more important, because I want Black women to see and know that it is possible. You can have it all. And I'm gonna go a step further. You deserve to have it all, and you don't need to settle for anything less. And so if having a family and a partner, and like, you can do it. Yeah. You absolutely can do it.
That's amazing. So what would you tell your younger self, knowing everything that you've accomplished now, let's say 19-year-old Briana?
I think about this often, and if I could tell 19-year-old Briana anything, I would just tell her to trust herself and to be bold. Mm-hmm. I think I spent a lot of time uncertain and insecure, and I had a lot of the things that are coming out of me now in me. They were always there. And when you check back in with yourself or people that have been around you, you notice a pattern of like, Briana, you've always loved to pour into people. You've always loved wellness. You've always been able to cultivate community, or whatever these things are about you. But we oftentimes don't trust who we are because of our age, or because of our circumstances, or because of our shortcomings. And I think I would just tell Briana, 19-year-old Briana, like, actually, you really are that girl. I would just give her the Renaissance album, tracks 1, 2, 3, and be like, sit with this, girl, and like, let it go into your spirit, and stand in the mirror and sing it to yourself repeatedly. And don't let anybody, any woman, any man, any child, any Instagram post, anything interfere with who you are, because you really are her. And that's real. That's like, I always say that to my 19-year-old self, and I'll say that to my 33-year-old self, because I think, and I would say that to you, because I think we live in a world and a society that consistently bombards us with messaging and imagery that's not true. Yeah. We're always told, even subtly, that we're not enough by, filters on your face and like these trends. I'm on TikTok again doing market research, and I'm seeing people like cover the part of you that makes you ugly or doesn't make you your best, whatever it is. I don't know what these kids are doing, but it's like, it's actually ridiculous. Yeah. And you get this one life, and you get this one body, this one being, and to waste even a day uncertain about something that you feel is right and authentic to you is a waste. And so I would just keep drilling that into her, and I just keep drilling that into me. Like, you are everything that you think you are. Yeah. And what everyone else thinks you are honestly does not matter.
True. So we addressed your 19-year-old self. What legacy do you want to leave here for your son and your family?
I would love to leave my son financially free. I would love to change the financial trajectory of my lineage. I don't come from wealth. I don't come from, I come from like not the best of circumstances. Again, my mom was kind of the first start.
Mhm.
And I think I would love to just take that to the next level. That is very important for me because I think you have a different capacity to exist and make decisions, again, as I said, out of abundance instead of out of desperation. And secondarily, I would want to give him freedom of thought. And I think the two are so closely tied. Obviously, you can have one or the other, but I just want law to exist in his complete fullness. I want him to be the most confident person that walks into any space. And I do that from now, you know, like I people look at me and they're like, he's not even 2 years old yet. And I'm like, yeah, but I need him to know who he is. And I need him to understand the gravity of what it means to be Law Thompson. And I want him to know what his name means. And I want him to know how hard his parents work for him to be able to exist however he wants. And if my legacy is that in my family, for my greater community, I would love a legacy for people to see themselves and how can I say this? I had a call today and she said, self-awareness does not change the action. And that's what I want my community. I want you to have a self-awareness and then change the action. So I hope that I'm able to not only give my community a space to be seen, but a place to act and to actively seek whatever it is to take them to their next level. I think my purpose in this world is to remind people how to exist in their highest self for that day, right? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, my higher self may look different. But each day, I want my legacy to be about allowing people to exist in their highest form.
That's amazing. You know, all of this is like, this conversation is great. You're just like making me think about a lot of things, right? What gems do you want to leave for our members and you know, those in the audience this evening that you haven't mentioned that you think would really be beneficial for them? Anybody that's looking to, you know, get into the wellness space or become a full entrepreneur, because it's a lot, right? And you have a great support system, but there are some people that don't have that, you know. What type of gems would you like to leave with them?
Okay, the first gem, to just piggybacking off of what you just said, while I have a great support system, I am extremely lonely because the vision and the mission was given to me. And so I want you as an entrepreneur to understand that two things can be true at the same time. I have a ton of people who are able to pour into me, who are able to help support me and lift me up. But sometimes when you feel this yearning and this pull for something that doesn't exist in the way that you're seeing it, it can still be lonely because you're still striving to put something into the world that only lives within you. And you can articulate it, and I can do these panels and I can talk to investors. But at the end of the day, it was given to me to bring into this world. And so it's okay to have those moments where like people don't get it. It was given to you. So I want to just remind somebody right now that like support and loneliness can coexist, right? Like you can feel supported and still feel like, but damn, you just don't get it all the way. And they won't. And like, that's a part of your calling or your journey, or your mission that you have to stand on. And that's an important part. I think the second element that we didn't really talk about today, that was like resources matter. You can have a million ideas, and that if you don't have the resources to bring them into the world, it is a hard fight, which was what I was mentioning when I was like, now it's time for investors. It's time to, you know, open this up in order for us to scale in the way that I know it's time for. You know, bootstrapping was a great start. It's given us an awesome proof of concept. But I think it's time now that we upwards and to the right. And I think the third thing is know your stuff. Like we live and I see and I encounter a lot of fraud, a lot of people who are taking money from small business owners and from founders. And because, you know, we live in this very like be an entrepreneur world.
Right.
But I think it's very important that you still know your stuff, know what your industry is, know your competitors, know how you're different, know your industry, know what you're doing. I think those are like key things that will always separate you, right? Like if you want to be one of one, you need to understand why are you the one. You can't just say the phrase, you know? And I think that goes back to some of that. Like when it's time to have that fierce confidence, if someone says like, why Briana, it's like, I'm gonna tell you why. And that it boom, 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 boom. And like unapologetically. And you need to know that, because again, it's an exchange. We still live in a very transactional world, especially when it comes to business. I don't want to live pie in the sky of like, just have a good heart. That doesn't keep the lease going. That doesn't keep anything going, actually. You know, it'll keep you going. But when in terms of business, y'all are MBAs, you know, it comes down to the numbers, the story, and how are they going to get more for less.
Yeah. Well, this is a great conversation. I just can't thank you enough for being here with us this evening. If there's any questions, I don't think there's any questions in the chat, but I do want to announce that we do have a special, you have some comments. You really are the best girl.
Thank you, Camilla.
Very excited. We have something cool in store coming up next month, as you know, and we will make an announcement to everybody. So look on our social media platforms. We do have some additional cool things to do with Briana's company, Spike Spin and Wellness Company. And we do have a Black party coming up on October 29th. So check us out on Instagram for that too. Again, Briana, I can't thank you enough. This has been a great conversation. I learned a lot of things too. You definitely dropped some really heavy jewelry on us tonight.
I'm so happy that you asked me to do this. I love the full circle moment of you remembering me and thinking of me from being a part of my real heart, the OG days of Spiked. And so I'm very grateful, Alicia. Thank you so much.
No problem. And again, it was a great safe space. I always felt like the conversations that we would have. I remember one time we were even talking about estate planning and how in our community that's really awkward, but you know, in other communities it's normalized. So that was like the first time I've heard of stuff like that. And that was just for everyone to know that's what it was like. We talked about that and so many other things that we talked about that I always remember. But if you guys are in Brooklyn, please check out Spike Spin. It's on Fulton Avenue, correct? And
yes, Franklin and Fulton.
Yes, and a great, great space. I did notice recently that you changed the wallpaper from rap artist to, I guess, your new branding. Was there a reason behind that? It was to flow into the new brand?
Yeah, it was something that I was hesitant to do. I love the rappers, but as we shift and evolve, we have to be very aligned just on the overall branding of the space. And that is another thing when you think about investors of what they want to see and how do you make sure that you're really telling the story and that it's all connected and that it all makes sense for the target demo. So I think that's the challenge when you are a Black owned company, but you're seeking funding from everyone. Yeah. So there are ebbs and flows, pushes and pulls. Again, thinking of the bigger picture keeps everything in alignment.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being here this evening, Briana. I can't thank you enough for doing this. And we definitely are looking forward to continuing our relationship with Spike Spin and Wellness Company. And thank you guys for being here this evening. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. My name is Alicia Suggs. I am the Vice President of Administration of the Metro New York chapter of the National Black MBA Association. And have a great evening, everyone. Good night.